Hello and welcome back to Somm2Somm. This is the show where we interview guests and help you to run a better program or be a more successful sommelier. So today we've got an exciting guest. After 12 months of all-female guests, we're back to allowing Y chromosomes on the show. So Ron, we had a little. You may remember Ron from our roundtable last month. We snuck him in there, but now he gets his full show. This is Ron Plunkett, otherwise known as CopSomm, and he's got a lot of various experience, and we're going to talk about all kinds of fun, manly things today, like cigars and heavy metal and all kinds of good things. So we're excited to be back. 2016 starting off big here, and we'll start with Ron. Welcome to the show, Ron. Now, like we start every time, we always ask people, give us a little bit of your background. Your background is obviously very, very unique and interesting. So tell us how you became CopSomm.
All right, Scott. Grew up in Northern California. I'm actually a bona fide California native. There are a few of us.
That's rare.
Grew up, I was born in Vallejo, raised in Vacaville. After college, I enlisted in the Solano County Sheriff's Department. Spent 21 years there. Was disabled in the line of duty. Had a really bad shoulder injury, so always had a passion for wine since I grew up kind of next door to Napa.
All right.
So a lot of my friends who were in the wine business said, well, since you love wine, why don't you follow your passion? And what I did to kind of get my foot in the door, so to speak, or my toe in the water, a friend of mine named Andrea Robinson, not Andrea, but Emily Wines, at the Fifth Floor Restaurant had a program called Sommelier for the Day. So I enrolled in it, and basically what you did for the day, you got to follow around a sommelier and see what they did. So I met with her about 1
Sort
o'clock.
of like a ride with, but
yeah, it was kind of like a ride along with a cop. Yeah. This was a ride along with a sommelier.
Oh, which was more nerve-wracking.
Yes. I show up. I meet Emily. We meet a few reps. She started asking me a few questions. I think the first thing we tasted was a Chateau Gruyere. And she goes, Ron, you know what that is? I said, yes, a Viognier. And you're a cop. I said, yeah, I drink a lot of wine.
Good. That's pretty good. Yeah.
So then we had a producer from Sicily, Planeta to be exact, and we had a Nero d'Avola. And she asked me, do you know what Nero d'Avola is? And yes, I do. It's from Sicily. And she goes, and you're a cop.
Yeah.
I said, I drink a lot. Fast forward, got to meet with the chef and help design that night's tasting menu. She said, well, follow me on the floor. She asked me at that time if I had any fine dining experience. I said, no, but I drink a lot. So I kind of followed her around on the floor. She ended up selling a bottle of Burgundy, and she asked me, do you know the difference between a Bordeaux and a Burgundy stem? I said, yes, I do. Do you know where they go? Yes, I do. So I set the table for her. She opened the wine, poured it. Then she goes, Ron, I think you're ready to solo. See that table looking at the wine list? Go sell me a bottle of wine. So I approached the table and sold a bottle of Opus 1.
All right.
So after the night, she kind of let me on my loose, and she goes, Ron, you're in the wrong line of work. I said, well, I'm going to be retiring shortly anyway. So she connected me with a gentleman named David Glancy. David at that time was the head instructor for the French Culinary Institute in Campbell. Now it's known as the International Culinary Center. Took the sommelier program there. I was lucky enough to graduate top of the class. I won what's called the Broadbent Prize. So upon graduation, I'd just been retired from the Sheriff's Department and needed a job. So a couple friends of mine, a gentleman named Chris Sawyer, said, why don't you do a little wine internship? So I worked with him at the Caneros Bistro. I helped him teach his Tuesday night wine education class. From there, a friend of mine, Scott Tracy here at La Tote, said, why don't you follow me around a little bit? So I did a little stage there. After about 4 weeks, I was contacted by a little small family winery in Sassoon called Vieser Family Vineyards. And they needed a tasting room manager and director of outside sales. Interviewed, was kind of hired on the spot. Worked for them almost 2 years. While I was there, the owner was very nice to me, wanted me to continue my education. And at that time, David Glancy started his own wine school, San Francisco Wine School. and he offered several different programs. First program I took was the French Wine Scholar program. This is a very intensive program on all French wines, regions, earth, soil. It kind of, what I say, crosses the T's and dots the I's. It's not just the where, it's the why wines are planted there, or different grape species are planted there. So did that program. I took the test, passed with high honors. Then I proceeded to take the California Wine Appellation Specialist credential.
Okay. Tell us about that one. What's that?
So that's all focused on all the AVAs of California, from north to south. As we know here in California.
So not just the fancy ones over here.
But just not Napa or something.
All right, okay. There are other appellations out there.
Sierra Foothills, Fairplay.
I've heard of them.
Yes, they're going to.
One time I could actually name the subs below that, but
yeah. Finished that program, graduated. Then Emily Wines contacted me and said there's a new restaurant opening in San Francisco called Hakkasan. So I went and interviewed with a gentleman named Amgad Waba. Thought the interview went quite well. I actually got a phone call that night offering me the position as floor sommelier. Opened up the restaurant. My first night on the floor, a little bit nervous. You know, I'm used to dealing with bikers, people of that ilk.
What do bikers drink? What are they?
Beer, tequila.
Not like Zinfandel.
Not Zinfandel. No, not First Growth Bordeaux or Grand Cru Burgundies.
Not Gruner. It's got umlauts in it. You think
You'd think they would.
Yeah.
My first night on the floor went very well. So about 6 months later, I was promoted to senior sommelier at Hakkasan. So I was with Hakkasan almost 2 years.
Wow.
Then I was recruited by Tyler Florence. He used to come in all the time. Guy does Food Truck Wars, a few other things. People heard him, I think. Mm-hmm. He interviewed me and hired me for Wayfair Tavern. So I was the beverage director there for almost a year. And from there, I was hired by Ahmed at the St. Regis Hotel, a Michelin star restaurant. As you know, working in the beverage world, when you work at a restaurant, long hours.
Oh, yeah.
So I live here in the Valley, so I was commuting to the city every day. I was starting to get a little bit burnt out, and then I was approached by Signorella. They were looking for a educator. Interviewed, was given the position, and that's where I am right now.
All right. Wow. That's quite the fast track, actually. That's very cool. You know, and that's one of the great things about this business is that, you know, you can come to it from different directions. I mean, I spent 15 years as an art dealer, and then you just, boom, you switch over, and then you can take off. So it's really about, you know, how much you put into it and, you know, how hard you're willing to work, like you said. That's exciting. That's great. So now tell us a little bit what you do at Signorella. I mean, that's an option, you know, when somms are looking to get off the floor, you know. We talk about Napa Valley being kind of like the great sommelier retirement home where, you know, a lot of people go to work for wineries. So how's that different than, say, working on the floor?
A few differences. One of the main things, I have banker's hours now, basically 9 to 5. As a restaurant, as you know, a lot of times we didn't get off the floor out of the restaurant until about 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning. Now I work more of a 40-hour work week.
Either, so.
Then the other difference, I get a captive audience for like 2 hours. As you know, working the floor of a restaurant, you might get maybe 2 to 5 minutes with a guest. Now I get literally 2 hours with a guest. So I can go into great detail about the Napa Valley, about our different terroirs, about how the wine is produced, how to age the wine. I actually initiated a new program that starts next month called Somm School. So we're going to be doing that on Thursdays, once a month, so different topics. Wine 101, basically how do you open a bottle of wine? How do you use an also? How do you decant wine? How do you assess wine? Food pairing basics, things of that nature. We do have a food and wine pairing program. So it is a little bit like working in a restaurant, although a lot smaller scale. So basically we see up to 10 guests at a time. So it's like doing one tiny restaurant with one turn.
So I would think, you know, that sounds pretty cool. Yeah, it's like fun. I would think, your background as a police officer, one of the things the skill that you would have to develop really quickly is the ability to read people.
Definitely.
And so I can imagine that would really be very successful in helping you make that transition to figure out just where people are and where they want to be. Now that you're in the winery situation, just tell our viewers a little bit about how you can size somebody up and figure out what level they are with just a couple questions, or maybe some questions that you use to separate different levels, so that you know that you're communicating at the right level and giving them the information you want them to have without overwhelming them.
Totally. In law enforcement, your most important attribute is communication. So I know how to read a guest if they're nervous, if they're looking at a wine list, and I know how far I can push someone, or when they're nervous about, if I'm going above their price. A lot of us do the wine list dance. So I can kind of tell. I can tell if a person's on a first date, how to calm them down a little bit. So that plays a role. And at Hakkasan, I actually did have to use my police officer skills a couple times to 86 certain individuals.
Well, that's helpful too. But what are some questions you might, introduce if you're just going up to the table and trying to figure out kind of where they are?
So what I do, I ask the person what do they usually drink. I ask the server what they've ordered, and I ask them a few key questions. What do you usually drink? What are we having? And sometimes I'll just go out and ask them, what's your price point? And then I work from there.
Well, I just read something on the Guild today. It was one of these posts that went up. They said they went to the table, and the lady wanted Pinot Noir, and the gentleman wanted Malbec, and he was trying to figure out what to do between the two. And what's your take on that, and what you're thinking about how you'd handle that situation?
Thank God we have a thing called half bottles. I've done that numerous times. So basically, give the lady what she wants, give the gentleman what he wants.
Yeah, but that's kind of a cop-out. Now, I've never seen half bottles from the Southern Hemisphere either. So let's forget about half bottles. There's no half bottles of Malbec, as far as I know, that exist. So come back and try again.
So what I've done, I've basically tried to get them on the same page. Maybe throw a few words out there, like what they're eating. So the Pinot might be a little bit too light for what they're having. The Malbec might be too heavy. Hey, let's cut it down the middle. Let's do a Grenache.
Okay.
My go-to, I know this is a cop-out as well, but I'm kind of a bubble guy. So at Ame, I had one of the largest grower producer lists.
Bubbles, right? Yeah.
So bubbles generally always work. And then it's always nice if you have a nice by-the-glass program.
Okay.
That always worked quite well. So I would... basically, I could glass it out. So basically, we'll start here. So the lady has this, the gentleman has that.
Okay.
Then with the next course, so on and so forth.
See, what I was thinking, my take on that was Malbec. Nobody really likes Malbec. It's kind of become the generic red wine.
Oops.
And so what you're dealing with is maybe a level where you're dealing with people that are maybe not that sophisticated. The lady's like, oh, I like Pinot, because it's cool to say you like Pinot. I didn't get a feel that they necessarily are, interested in delving into the cruise of Burgundy or anything like that. So, in that case, maybe you got to ask more questions to figure out, where they are. So, let's get to the next level.
So let's say the gentleman wanted a heavier Pinot. So I'm going to go something primarily maybe from Santa Barbara, something a little more extraction. Not to throw it, but like sea smoke. So something a little richer, a little bit heavier Pinot Noir. So that kind of would split the difference.
Yeah. My take, when I hear, I've said this before, when I hear someone say, I really like Malbec before you even get to the table, it means I really want to drink this.
Yes.
But I don't really want to spend that much on it. By the way, beautiful job opening the bottle with the lovely Linea W opener. This one's a really cool one with the polished wood and the shiny handle and everything. It's very nice. And this is the Signorello Padrone. Yes. All right.
First, I want to talk. That's a great wine key, by the way. I've never used it before, so it's my first time using it. That worked really, really well. That's a very nice wine key.
Souvenir, guest souvenir there. So let's try the wine. We've got, I see Andrea Robinson's glasses.
Yes, the one. I love Andrea's glasses.
Yeah.
So this is our 2012 Signorello Padrone. Primarily Cabernet Sauvignon with 9% Cabernet Franc. Padrone in Italian, literally translated, means the big boss. So this is an homage wine. So Ray Sr., our founder, passed away in 1998. So his son Ray Jr. took over the company. So Jr. decided to do a wine in honor of Dad. This is it.
Okay.
Very limited production. We only do about 500 half cases a year. Here's a funny thing. I'm talking about scores, which most sommeliers don't do. Reason I want to talk
the
about
guests
it.
care about them.
Yes,
so,
they do.
hey.
So, and when you work at a winery or a retail shop, I think scores do really matter.
Absolutely.
Floor, not as much, but for retail, I definitely think they matter. So, Mr. Parker was kind enough to give us a 97 plus on this.
All right, that's good. So now you're in Oak Knoll, right?
Yeah. So
the vineyards are all estate there? Or?
yes.
Okay.
All the wines we produce are estate except our Pinot Noirs. Every other varietal we do is estate. We're a tiny winery, only do about 5,000 cases a year. So we are definitely a micro winery.
So since you grew up in Napa, you know this area like the back of your hand. Tell us a little bit of the differences about different regions in Napa. I mean, in Oak Knoll, you're sandwiched between Coombsville and Stag's Leap District, which are completely different.
Totally.
So, talk a little bit about the differences there.
We're a little bit cooler climate than Stag's Leap. We get a little bit more influenced by the fog. And we get this little kind of vortex thing going on when the wind and the maritime air comes in off the San Pablo Bay. So we tend to be a little bit cooler. Most of our fruit is hillside fruit. So a little bit cooler as we go up, little microclimates as we head up the hill. We have two distinct soil types on the property. We have what's known as YOLO loam, getting geeky for you guys. And about halfway up the hill, it turns over to what we call hambrite. Hambrite's a very volcanic, iron-rich, low nitrate soil, so the vines really have to struggle. So we call the vines at the bottom of the base of the hill are couch potato vines. They don't have to work so hard. About halfway up on the backside of the hill, we also have an east side block. It's all hambrite. Vines really have to struggle. So definitely two distinct soil types. So we kind of like to consider ourselves a monopole. So Oak Knoll is famous. It's primarily known for Chardonnay, kind of look flat.
A lot of Merlot.
A lot of flat, but we're one of the few hillsides in Oak Knoll. So, and we're literally less than a quarter mile from Stag's Leap. So we kind of share a little bit of both.
Now, say that's on the west side. Now, what would you get on the east side?
So east side, less sun exposure. So we have a block of Cabernet Franc and a block of Cabernet Sauvignon on that side. Those vines take almost 2 weeks longer to ripen because primarily they only get morning sunlight. So about 1, 2 o'clock, the sun sets on that part of the hill. So it literally takes 2 weeks longer to ripen those grapes than it does our west block.
So I love to teach, when I was at Meadowood teaching classes about Napa Valley terroir, we'd pull a wine from Oak Knoll and say one from Diamond Mountain and maybe one from St. Helena and show the differences in, is this close to 100% cab? Or
it's 9% cab Franc.
So 91, okay, so you're pretty close to like a monovarietal expression.
Yeah.
And that's one thing we featured was like, the vineyards in Napa Valley, like you said, monopoles, the terms are more Burgundy really than they are Bordeaux. And so really when you start to really figure out these little spots and these little microclimates and everything, you're really closer to Burgundy, even though it's Cabernet. What's your take on that? What are some regions that you think, up and down that really express themselves differently?
So definitely Carneros. So we know one of the coolest climates in Napa. That's why Pinot Noir, Pinot Meunier. Then all the way up to Calistoga, a little bit warmer. Some great Syrahs, Petite Syrahs. That's what's cool about our valley. Napa Valley only approximately 5 miles wide by 30 miles long. There's such a diversity. There's over 90 different soil types in the valley. So that's why we can do the diversity of grapes we can. So being a sommelier wine geek, I think it's one of the best places in the world to work because we have so many different grape varieties and different soils and subclimates. It's just wild.
To me, it all comes back to Cabernet because that's kind of the money grape.
Okay,
and that's, sure, there's Aligoté and Burgundy and there's, other things, but really it's all about, the Cabernet and the expression for the east side, the west side, the Vacas, the Mayacamas, all the differences there. It's pretty dramatic. So I guess that's how you adapt to like being Napa focused is you start to deal with the micro aspects of it versus when you're looking at Italy and France and Germany and Spain, and you have the whole world. So it's a transition.
Yeah, I think being here in Napa, we kind of dissect things a little bit smaller because there is the diversity here, and we live here, So we can kind of go into deeper detail than we would other regions, since we're here and we talk about it on a daily basis.
Leads me to an interesting point now. You lived here, you know Napa really well. You worked in San Francisco, which is notorious for not even realizing that there's a wine region 30 miles north or 50 miles north. So what was that like? How'd you transition to like all the other stuff that?
I'm a Napa guy by heart, but you're exactly right. In the San Francisco wine scene, it's kind of whatever the next hot thing is, and Napa might be a tiny part of a list. It's so diverse in San Francisco. And in San Francisco, I got to say, I've worked in other regions, really wine savvy guests. But you do get a large portion of visitors who are going to be, I'm in San Francisco, they'll be going to Napa or Sonoma. They want to try some California stuff. But I was always kind of tied at one of the restaurants I worked at because I only had so much room on my list to put California wines.
Mm-hmm. It seems to me like that is the struggle, because you do have a lot of tourists coming to California and they want to drink California wine, but it seems like everybody's kind of into their geeked out thing. But let's just talk about geeky stuff though. Where do you really geek out? What's your wheelhouse? You mentioned Champagne.
Champagne, yep.
What is it about Champagne, and maybe what are some other regions that really?
So Champagne is so, and again, cop out again. It goes with so many different foods.
CopSomm cop out.
So you can have anywhere from a Blanc de Blanc, which I like as an aperitif or lighter stuff, all the way to a rosé. I've actually done pairings at Ame. I did what I call bubbles pairing. So it's basically 5 courses with 5 different bubbles.
That's fun.
And we went from a lighter to a heavier to a dessert, a demi-sec.
Yeah.
So it's very versatile. And I've yet to find a person you hand a glass of champagne to, it does not put a smile on their face.
Absolutely. And when you're running a program, get your servers to start off with bubbles, because boom, you don't have to, your bar's not down for 10 minutes. $25 for a glass of champagne, it's gone like that, and then they want wine.
Right, exactly.
It's it's a great. Well, what about beyond bubbles? What else?
Right now, I'm a Gruner guy. I love Gruner Veltliners.
All right. The umlauts.
Yep.
Yeah.
One of the weird things I had to learn working for Hakkasan, I actually got to do a little bit of training in London. And I was working at our flagship location, Hanaway Place. And I actually had a gentleman, I was working my first time on the floor at that establishment, asked me for, hey, how many groovies I had on the list. I'm like, what is a groovy? So I had to ask, what's a groovy? Oh, that's what the Brits call Gruner Veltliner.
Yeah, I've heard that. I never seen anybody use that, but yeah absolutely. So I kind of got turned on to him there. And you can go from very entry level to super high end Gruners. And I think that's a very versatile wine. So give us some of a couple go-to producers for Gruner.
Oh God,
put you on the spot there. Yeah,
you're an evil man.
Gotta have them.
Probably Schloss Gobelsberg is one of my favorites.
Yeah, great stuff.
Yep.
Great stuff. Cool. All right, so let's see. We've got a big, powerful red. We talked about getting into tunes, and we've got some cigars here. So we're well set here. So let's get into some goofy stuff. I know that we happen to share similar musical tastes for loud, obnoxious rock and roll. So let's take a sip of the Signorello and kind of do a musical tasting note here. How about that? But that certainly has that's Marshall Stacks coming out of there. Yeah, definitely. That one goes to 11, I think.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, Cliff.
Yeah, I think Lemmy would have enjoyed this wine for sure. Yeah, nice polished tannins. It's kind of, I don't know. Give me a pairing. What do you think?
Definitely, with the tannins, and there's a little nice acid backbone with this because the east side fruit tends to be a little bit higher acid, and the soil on the backside of the hill, very low pH, so you get a little bit higher acid grapes there. Mm-hmm. So my perfect pairing for this in a perfect world, bone-in ribeye all the way.
Oh, I'm talking about music.
Oh. So definitely.
Obviously bone-in. Yeah.
So with the color, AC/DC Back in Black. All
right. Okay. See, I was
Young.
thinking you take that polish and that finesse with the power. It's got to take me to like Dio, maybe, Rainbow in the Dark, something like that. Just that power and finesse, but just pure class. Yep. Some of the Aussie stuff in the 90s that's really well produced. Yep. Kind of taking me there, which means it's a damn good bottle of wine. So you got wine, you got rock and roll, you might as well go with cigars. And we've got the best here. We got Forbidden Fruit, little Habana.
Yes.
This is the Habana Monte Cristo number 4, is
Yes.
it? Number 4 would be the Corona.
Yes.
So this is a good time to go over, even though it's no longer part of the court system,
Yes.
cigar service.
Correct.
So, what you used to do is you'd have to know all about the various different, the Vuelta Bajo and the Pinar del Rio and all the different subregions of Cuba and where these came from. Monte Cristo being one of the classic old brands. Cohiba being one of the newer ones that was put in by Castro, I think, after the embargo, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, so, Cohibas
So
are very
Cohiba's actually a
sought
fairly
after.
newer
Right.
cigar company. You have Monte Cristo, a classic. So we basically have a classic and a new classic.
An old classic and modern classic.
yes.
The key is when you're doing, what button on this? How does this work? Oh, there we go. Ah, clever. So you toast the foot
Yep.
to get it burning evenly so that the wrapper burns at a consistent rate. And then you light it and you hold it and they light.
Yes.
Now, one of the things about Cuban cigars is they're not really training wheel cigars.
No, they're not.
These are some of the most powerful cigars, although the Nicaraguans have caught up and some of the Dominicans have gotten pretty powerful. But generally, these will knock you on your butt, which fits with the theme of
Yes.
everything we have around the table here. So we've got a pretty decadent show here. We have a great big baller cab. We've got awesome cigars. We've got a very slick black opener here. Those pretty good times there. Any questions from the audience about this decadent show we have going on here?
Can I have some?
Yeah, well, I don't know. There's advantages to being in the business, is you
Yes.
get to know the finer things about all sorts of things. So,
Everybody grab a glass.
yeah, we've
Yeah,
got
please.
glasses over there. We've got the.
I didn't want to be rude.
Yeah, no, you guys showed up like at the last second. This is great. Go get some wine.
All right.
Yeah, here we go.
Thank you.
You're welcome, sir.
So everybody that has some glass wine, it's going to come up with a musical pairing for this. So
Thank you.
I like that.
take
I'll
a
take
sip.
some AC/DC.
ACDC, which one?
We'll be playing AC/DC shortly. So guys, you have 1 minute, 2 minutes, I'll give you. How would
There we
you,
go.
is this a good way to start the night, end the night?
All the above.
Yeah.
Generally, I think traditionally.
Guys, stand, yeah.
Traditionally, I'm not a big still wine and cigar guy. I tend to go with spirits. I think that's kind of the traditional thing. Scotches or rums
Yeah.
are fantastic with cigars. But people do large, full-bodied Cabernets or ports or those types of wines with cigars, and they work reasonably well. It's kind of like wine and chocolate pairings. They don't
Yeah.
really work, but people want them to work, so they're okay. The key is, quality. You have good quality stuff, it's going to work. So sometimes you don't want to force it. You
This is
just
true.
let it happen. Yeah.
I'm gonna go with Metallica Black Album just to.
You like it?
Yeah. Fade to black, maybe. Yeah. There we go.
Well, Lars
All
Aller.
Yeah.
Mindy, what do you think?
I definitely think I could use a little cigar with this.
We need a pairing though from you.
Oh, a pairing for the cigar? or
A
for
musical
wine?
pairing for the
Musical
wine.
pairing.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, that's a tough one. Well, I said AC/DC, but that was a cheater.
That's a
That
band.
was a cheater move.
Just like in a court test, we need to be a little more specific there.
Oh boy. How about Metallica? I can't think of the name.
Like Enter Sandman, maybe.
I'm better with wine than
Okay.
bands.
Shannon, what do you think?
Prince, Raspberry Beret.
Raspberry Beret. All right, I like that. That's a nice
Gonna take
change
an
of
awful
pace.
segue. I like
That's
that.
She
pretty.
was holding on to
That's
that.
pretty
I like
fun. Yeah.
It's like maybe
Very
just
cool.
say Christina Aguilera.
Very cool. Yeah. Well, just goes to show that wine is an individual thing, and it's open to interpretation, and it's open to everyone, whether you're an art dealer, cop, or whatever you are. So, welcome to the show. Thanks for checking it out, and we look forward to talking more about putting together great programs and enjoying this life that we've all chosen. So, thanks for coming, Ron.
Cheers.
Thanks, everybody.
Cheers.
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 Cheers. Woo.
Cheers. Cheers.